All right, welcome to the next episode of I Should Be Working, which is now a podcast with a name as opposed to not having a name. Joining me again is the conquering hero, Marty Lang. Thank you for joining me, Marty.
Hey, great to be back again.
So you were the first guest, and it went badly, but
I don't think so.
we got crashed by a toddler. There was a whole lot of different things. and But you were just starting your crowdfunding campaign for Stay With Me, and now it is over. And so now what we're going to do is go over it a little bit and dig a little bit into the campaign and what worked and what didn't work.
Cool.
So yeah, so tell the people a little bit about the campaign if they didn't watch the first one, and we'll go from there.
So Stay With Me was a Seed&Spark crowdfunding campaign that ran through the month of April. And it's for a feature drama film that I directed last summer in Los Angeles. I started teaching as soon as the film was done. I started teaching at the University of Central Arkansas. So I actually drove cross country the day after we finished shooting. And I've been here as
Which
a film.
is when people are traditionally rested and in shape to drive across country.
I found out that there's never a time that people are in shape to do that. But once I got here, I work as a film professor now at the University of Central Arkansas. And this spring, I actually had a crowdfunding class, which was the first time it's ever been done in a film program. And our final project was to actually run this campaign. So me and my other producers, we were responsible for the actual fundraising of it. And our students were responsible for making media for backer updates. They were responsible for public relations, responsible for running our social media channels, really kind of all the secondary and tertiary jobs of the campaign our students were handling. And lo and behold, we were successful. We actually were able to raise 104% of our goal, which I thought, given our times, was pretty amazing.
That's pretty great. So you hit the goal with like 4 or 5 days left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the back of your head, because you've done a lot of these and you've seen a lot of these, how quickly did you go, shit, should have put the goal higher?
No, I actually was okay when that happened. It was more of a relief than it was how much, what can we get for a stretch goal?
Mm-hmm.
Because this really was a really rough environment, frankly, to be crowdfunding in, given the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. There were enough people that came on board that they were able to get us over our green light percentage, which was fantastic. And then once we hit our goal with a couple days left, I had started thinking about putting a stretch goal together. We had originally tried to we wanted to raise $22,000 in the original version of the campaign in January. Then as we got closer to the campaign, we decided, okay, I think we need to lower it a little bit. So it went down from 22 to 15, and then from 15 to 14, because we got a little cold feet right before we started.
Sure.
But I think that given what we were trying to raise it for, I think the timing of it was good. We wanted to include a distribution plan as part of our crowdfund with the $22,000 goal. So it was pretty easy to kind of like strip that out and then bring the number down and still have everything that we needed.
Yeah, that's an easy thing to pull out. So I like to tell people, because you always get these people who like have run like 1 or 2 campaigns, and then they're like, I am now an expert. I know all of the things. I've had 2 successful campaigns. Pay me money and I will tell you what to do. And then I laugh at them. And I tell people there's no one, every campaign, you learn something new. So what is the thing that you in this campaign were like, shit, I had no idea?
Well, I think the thing that we learned, the thing I learned that we should have included more from the beginning of the campaign was that was sort of a marketing push to get people to come on board by offering them an entertainment experience through the course of the campaign itself. Right. So, when we did my first campaign for Rising Star, 1,000 years ago,
Right.
We were all about, making the movie the goal of the campaign. Right. So like, if you contribute to this campaign, you will be a part of this movie and nothing else. But the more I listened and the more, I talked to some other folks, in the crowdfunding world, the more I realized we kind of missed an opportunity to really consider the campaign itself entertainment in its own right. Because we had our students were making backer videos, 2 to 3 per week over the course of the campaign, and they were all on really, kind of relevant topics related to entertainment and the pandemic and mental health, stuff like that. So I think, for the next time I come up to try to run a campaign, I really want to consider it an entertainment experience in its own right. So to create a month's worth of interesting things that people can follow along with, in addition to the final project that the money would eventually help to support.
Well, that's part of why the all or nothing model works, is because it becomes a little bit of a game, and you're watching and you start rooting for them, and you get like emotionally invested in these people you may or may not even know. So, I mean, that's kind of like a broader sense of that whole concept.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's more important to have that, gamification in place on a campaign where it's not 100% or nothing.
Right.
Since we've got, since Seed&Spark is 80% or nothing, once you get to that point, then there has to be something else to kind of carry people through. And I think that could definitely be one of those things.
Did you find it was difficult once you hit 80% for people to not just go, we're done? Because you got the green light and you've got the, it's going to happen. Was it hard? Because normally 80 to 100% is the easiest part. A lot of times, like for a Kickstarter campaign, because if you get to 80% with 4 days left, you're like, well, this is definitely going to happen. But here, like, you have to keep sort of pushing, and you sort of lose the carrot of this could all go away.
And it was hard when we hit 80%. A few of us were we definitely kind of took our foot off the brake, our foot off the gas a little bit, and it took a little bit for me to jump back in. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I took a day off when we hit 80%. I was like, okay, we're good. I think we're okay. We can figure out a way to do this. And then sort of came back in and started the push again. But yeah, it's tough, when there's not that deadline beating down on you. It's easy, given the amount of work that it is, to kind of slough off a little bit. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody else.
Would you tell people, like, if they were going to do a Seed&Spark campaign, would you say put your 80%, make that what your 100% normally would be? Would that be the way to do it?
That's one way. And in a sense, Seed&Spark is set up that way, so
Right.
that if you don't make the 100%, 80% should be, since you're an indie filmmaker, the saying goes, you should have enough wherewithal and ingenuity to make it work on 80%.
Yeah.
That's certainly one way to do it. But I think, as we were just talking about, the idea of creating something else that's, entertainment based that people can follow along with, I think might have an effect on something like that too.
Yeah. All right. So you sent us, like I'm an organization. You sent me some of your stats from the back end. And so let's go through some of those just for fun. And let's see if Zoom will let me bring them to the forefront so I can see them. All right. So you had, hey, look at that. So you had 259 followers, 154 contributors, and 14 super fans. And your big city was Los Angeles, actually.
Yeah.
Which I kind of was surprised by that. I thought it was like LA and then New York and then Conway. I'm assuming that's Arkansas somewhere.
Yeah, that's where I live now. Yep.
Okay. And then Little Rock, because I would have thought you would have gotten most of them from Arkansas or Connecticut. And like no Connecticut there.
We got almost no Connecticut on this. And I guess, I don't know. So what part of what I
mad at you probably.
I am maybe because that I moved out. Yeah, I guess. I reached out to the 176 backers we had on the Rising Star campaign, minus the folks who either changed their email addresses or are no longer with us. And I honestly didn't get as enthusiastic a response as I thought I was going to get.
Right.
And I don't know why that is. I mean, I did move out of Connecticut in 2015. And I've been in either California or Arkansas since then. So it could just be out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Could be that Connecticut was hit harder than other states in terms of unemployment. And I didn't look at those statistics, so I don't know if that's true or not, but that certainly could be a possibility. Or, the reason I left Connecticut was because the film industry sort of left a couple years before that. So folks may have just moved on, so it could be any one of those things.
Do you think it could be that that group is just 10 years or 10 years older now, and they have different priorities, and maybe they have, they've got kids, they're not paying attention to crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the financial sense of it, yeah, I definitely think there could be, when you tie it into the pandemic, I definitely think that's something. But like, yeah, it was interesting. Like in the Rising Star campaign, and this is such a weird statistic, I had 6 former girlfriends back in the Rising Star campaign, and in this one, I only had 2, or actually only 1, and my current girlfriend. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's.
And you've accumulated 4 ex-girlfriends since then.
You.
So, is this of the original 6? Only only one of them came back.
Yeah, I mean, all of them responded to me and were like, listen, I can't do it. So there was communication at least. So
right.
That was. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I don't know if there's any correlation to it at all.
That'd be a fun metric to create. The ex-girlfriend / boyfriend percentage.
The ex-lovers matrix.
The ex-lovers matrix. Yeah. Yeah, and then you've got to, there's just so many variables that work into that are like, maybe they don't like what happened, in between the sheets, and maybe that's why they're not backing, or maybe they really did, and that's why they back. Who knows?
Well, I guess that means my numbers are going to go lower as I get older, I guess.
All right, so let's look at the next thing. So I'm looking now at your campaign progress chart. Mm-hmm. So you had a really big boost from Mark Duplass,
yes,
who you have worked with way back in the day. So let me see if I can find where that is. Is that, I don't know if you're looking at this too, is that right before week 2, or is that right in the beginning of week 3?
I can actually tell you the date.
Okay.
Let me pull it up on Twitter here. Yeah, Mark's tweet came on April 7th. Okay. So I think that was right at the beginning of the 2nd week.
Okay, so that's where that bump is. So Seed&Spark, and they have this curve where it says you're sort of what your normal campaign is going to do. And that's sort of where you overtook the curve for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge amount of engagement from that tweet. We ended up with 91 likes on that, 28 retweets, and about 7 or 8 comments based on that one tweet alone. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about that, this was something I tried for the first time on this campaign, was I tried to do sort of like second-degree engagement. So if someone else engages with a post about the campaign from someone that's not me, I really made an effort to try to go and follow up with those people.
Okay.
Contact them and say, hey, I just saw that you retweeted this tweet from Mark about the campaign. It would be amazing if you could join us with a contribution, kind of thing. That was actually really effective. We had a bunch of people come on board, for $20, $30, a couple $10 or whatever. But that was more effective than I thought it was going to be. And that tweet also led us to the first of our associate producers, a woman named Lisa Shalit. She saw Mark's tweet and then came on board and followed us with a $1,000 contribution.
Nice.
Yeah, and I had never met her before that. So
those are the best ones, where it's like an out of the blue big one, and you're like, what is that?
Yeah, it was really good. It was great.
All right, so let's look at the next one here. All right. I don't need that one. Okay, so let's look at some metrics. So Seed&Spark is pretty good at metrics. They're not as good as I would like them to be, but that's a different thing. So I have a theory that there's going to be a consistent, if you pull up a big enough database, there's going to be a consistent ratio of dollars per backer, dollars per follower, and then backers to follower, a backer-follower ratio. So
specifically for that.
Yeah, for any campaign, really. And so awesome. You had your dollar per backer is $95.26 per backer. Mm-hmm. Bree over there tells me that the last time they ran those numbers, it was like $100 a backer, roughly. So you're below the number. That number's probably a little inflated of real campaigns. There's one campaign I saw where the average backer was $1,300. So something weird's going on there.
What did they have? 8 backers, 9 backers?
No, it's like if you look on there, it's like the 3rd most funded campaign.
Wow.
So they had like 90 backers, and they raised like over $100,000 or something like that.
Okay.
And so it throws all the numbers off, skews everything up. Daughter, for example, which is currently running, they're at 63.34 a backer, and they've gotten a lot of followers. They have a really high follower backer ratio.
Something, if I can jump into something really interesting about the
Sure.
daughter campaign, they had a really good piece of press at the beginning of their campaign in the Los Angeles Times.
Yeah.
And we actually got residual looks off of that.
Really?
Yeah, if you look through where the majority of our page views came from, the LA Times is actually number 4 for us, and that kind of came into play after that Los Angeles Times article ran.
Yeah.
So that might be something like major national level press really can be a positive thing.
Yeah, that can always help. And he said when he was on Calvary, he said that they really pushed followers like hard because they started, if I'm remembering this correctly, they started before the pandemic.
Yes. Yep.
And then they got an extension because Seed&Spark will do extensions.
Mhm.
And so they've had a much longer campaign, which is probably part of the factor. So I also ran this for the 10 most funded, the 10 highest grossing campaigns on Seed&Spark in their history, which minus the one that's weird.
Okay.
So the average dollar per backer for them is $106.45. The average dollar per follower is $86.08. So you're below both of those, which I always argue is a positive. I always want to be below those numbers because I feel like then you've got a stronger base, especially if you've got a week left in your campaign.
Yeah, no, that definitely. I mean, I felt good about where our audience was coming from. I had a feeling that Los Angeles was going to be the biggest pool of people that we would get because the work I've done in crowdfunding and education has been at Chapman University and at Cal State Northridge before I went to UCA. So I was pretty confident that we'd be able to get a number of people out of there. But yeah, I mean, in terms of geography, I mean, we had folks from all over the place. So
which is cool. Well, you've been all over the place. There's that.
Yeah.
Everybody likes you, and so there's that. So yeah, of those though, like the high end on the dollar per backer is, and I didn't write down the campaign names and I put them in Excel, which was stupid. Was 460 was the highest dollar per backer, and the lowest, there's one that did 54.89 a backer, and then Money and Violence, which I worked on, did 62.45 per backer. So, and that's roughly where Daughter is. Daughter's at those much lower numbers. But the backer to follower ratios, they're all 1.09 to 1.83, and you're at 1.68. So I think you've got a pretty good, I think you're on the high end of the curve in terms of getting engagement and building audience out of it. And my old thing where it's the crowd greater than funding thing, I mean, that's what you want, because eventually you're going to have to make another movie or put this movie out there, and that's
Right. Yeah, I think that's something we looked at that from the very beginning, even before the campaign started, because when we were putting the $22,000 version of the campaign together, we were trying to put in financing for a 10-city theatrical tour that we would do once the film was finished.
That's
and
not
we're still
going to happen anymore.
Well, maybe it'll be on 10. If it's on 10 computers, that's the same thing. So,
right, there you go.
we were looking to try to find areas of heavy interest, as a result of the campaign, and have those cities be the places that we would end up going to. So there still is, a hope, if it's down the line that we end up getting the film out there, we could do something like that. If it's 2022, hopefully things will be back to more or less normal by then.
Maybe.
We'll have to wait and see.
Maybe. All right. So the other thing I thought was interesting was Seed&Spark is the option where they will let the backer pay for the fees and cover the fees, which when I backed it from Calvary, I did not do because I'm a selfish asshole. But you got 75% of people actually did that, which is that a thing? Did you do you push that? Do you tell people about that, or do you just wait for it to be asked and they go and they're already feeling generous?
I've been asked about it, but I haven't put that out there. the fact that we're getting somebody to contribute, that's the first step. I just want to make sure I get the conversion. And I always
Right.
feel like if you try to do that extra 5%, you're talking past the sale, you know?
Yeah.
So that's, I've responded to people who've asked me about it. And I said, you know, if you could, it would be incredible, you know, then that would give us a little bit more resources to work with. And yeah,
Right.
so it worked out pretty well, I think.
I mean, yeah, I think once you see it, you're like, well, it's an extra. It's $1, it's $2, but it adds up. I mean, you got an extra $1,035 out of that,
Yeah.
for a $15,000 campaign is
Not nothing.
is
Yeah.
huge. You only ended up paying 12% of your fees.
Yeah.
You paid $145 in fees, which is, and I'd be really interested to see if that's a consistent thing across all of Seed&Spark's platform.
You know,
Like
I
where
would,
that number is, like, you know, what's the distribution of it? Like, the different audiences, different types of films do better with that.
that'd be a great thing to study. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I sent a bunch of these to Bree, and she's like, that will take some time. And they're very busy, so, you know, whatever. Okay, so how did the student thing work? Because I've run a campaign where it's a lot of people who don't know what they're doing, and which is students. Like, even if they've had a class, they don't know what they're doing.
Well, no,
And
totally.
it's a lot of herding cats. Like, how did that work for you, the cat herding?
Well, the point of the class was to sort of introduce the students to the idea of trying to expand an audience beyond your friends and family,
Sure.
right? So what we did, there were two things I wanted to do, you know, with the students going through it. I wanted them to get the experience of going through a campaign in real time and experiencing, you know, whatever stresses and whatever highs and lows happen over the course of that.
But you can't fake that. There's no simulation for that.
Right. And I think in that sense, we were really successful. The other thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that they weren't stressed with the actual responsibility of raising money. So Seed&Spark was a great fit, I thought, because of the fact that they have followers. So what I did was I assigned them the responsibility of trying to find followers throughout the course of the campaign, because that would give them the experience of reaching out to people that they don't know.
Mhm.
It would also be sort of an easy lead in, you know, instead of people going out and asking somebody for a contribution, just trying to find people who are passionate about subjects related to the film and trying to get them to follow, I thought would be a little bit of an easier ask.
Right.
What was interesting was that it was still unbelievably hard for the students to do that.
Sure.
Most of the students were not able to get followers, and that was interesting to me. I didn't ding them for that. Part of our final
fail.
Oh man, part of the assignment at the end of class was to kind of reflect on that process and talk about what the challenges were and stuff like that. And a lot of it was, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't feel comfortable reaching out to somebody to try to get them to do something, even if it didn't have anything to do with money, which I thought was really interesting. I thought that taking the money away would make it a little bit easier.
But it
And
didn't.
I think no, it didn't. I think had the pandemic not happened over April, I think it would have made things a lot easier.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was interesting that it worked out that way.
If you think about it, it's basically cold calling. And cold calling is always hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's terrible. Like, I did it for a summer. I wasn't even cold calling. Like, people were calling me, and it was hard. Like, I worked for a credit card company for 2 summers, and it was awful. It was awful because your phone just keeps ringing, and these people are like asking you questions, and you're like supposed to try to then turn it around and convert them into money. And I hated every minute of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could see where the act of calling would be the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you got someone on the phone or on the email or whatever, then it gets a lot easier.
Yeah.
Once you get into a conversation.
Yeah. So my hope is, because they've gone through this, if they decide that they want to crowdfund on their own, they'll at least understand what they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we got them to that point.
Cool.
So that's definitely cool. And I mean, the other thing too, which this was something that kind of evolved as the campaign went on, from the educational standpoint, it became really clinical, because what we started doing, and I had no idea that we were going to do this beforehand, it just sort of happened. Each class, I would pull up each of the backers that we would get in the 2 days before the Wednesday class, or the 3.5 days before the Monday class. And I would actually tell the stories of how we converted them. So like
Cool.
I could show them my Twitter feed, and I could show them like, so here, this guy Colin, I've never met this guy before, but he responded to a tweet from my friend Jerry. So I responded to him, and that turned into a $5 conversion. And I went through with all these different people and all these different stories. You know, this person's a friend of mine from high school. This person's a colleague of mine from Chapman University. You know, like all these different places. So I think they really started to understand all the places that you can find supporters.
Yeah.
And that was something I hadn't really thought about before the campaign started, but it was definitely, it just sort of presented itself, you know, as we went along. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And then you're like, these two people, they're a little weird. This is Sean and Lucas. They're a little crazy.
You guys, man, I got more mileage out of the two of you. After the cavalry thing happened, I spent half a class on you guys. It was fantastic.
That's like all Sean's doing, and it's brilliant. I think it's really kind of brilliant, and I wish we'd thought of it like 8 years ago, or whatever. Because it's weird. And you were on the one for which one were you on? The Sammy's,
Yeah.
Sammy James Jr. And it's weird, like his face when we were like, no, we're really doing lottery tickets. He was just like, that's insane.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Where did you come up with this? I think it's great. I think it's like a low key way to talk about a campaign and to promote a thing, and then it's fun, and then there's there might be a jackpot. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's weird. I'm having fun doing it. So.
And it's the altruism that the indie film community is known for.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And it reminds me of the early crowdfunding days.
Yes.
When there were rallies and people would, everybody would sort of band together, and it was like, all right, everybody, let's go. We've got to get this one over the finish line. And
yes.
That doesn't really seem to happen anymore.
No, I agree. And I think it's partially because of the ubiquitousness of crowdfunding. I think it's just so common. And a lot of people are getting into it now, to try to raise money for bigger projects and things like that. So there's not as much of an indie feel to it. I mean, of course there's tons of indie projects, but the community I think is a lot bigger and therefore a little bit more fractured than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. It doesn't feel as nearly as close knit, and I think maybe that's a big part of it, or maybe it's just that group all sort of aged out of it and they're all doing other things.
That could be. I mean, that's interesting you mentioned that, because a lot of my students, when I told them about a year without rent, that blew their minds. And, and they had never considered doing something like that. It's sort of like their version, like an indie film graduate school, kind of thing. So there might be someone who's just graduating from school now who might do something similar to that and create their own community similar to ours.
Well, they have my blessing. They can do it. I'm not going to do it again unless my wife kicks me out, and then maybe. Yeah. So, okay. So really, truly, how big of a factor was the pandemic, do you think?
It was a big factor.
Yeah.
And I tie this into specifically a friend of mine from high school. His name is Scott, and not to drag anything down, but he passed away last night from COVID.
That, yeah.
So he went into the hospital right around the time the campaign started, and all of my friends from high school were talking about it, obviously, because we were all friends with him. And Facebook tends to be where my high school friends and I gather. So from that standpoint of it, it really made me uncomfortable to try to kind of ask out for that sort of thing. So for Facebook, I spent all my time contacting people directly. I never put anything out, sort of publicly. And I was really sort of apologetic about it, in the context of Scott and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think, as time goes on, I mean, more people are going to have someone that's been affected by this disease. And that's going to change the mindset of a lot of people who are going to try to crowdfund. It may change the projects that those people try to make. I think as time goes on, you're going to see, a lot of these stories, of people who succumb to this disease or suffer from it, and those stories will become, media of it, on its own. So it became a bigger factor as time went on. And in that sense, I'm actually quite glad that the campaign's over.
I'm a little worried that there's going to be just so much media about it that it's going to overwhelm everything else. That, that's going to be, we're just going to get exhausted by it.
I think we already are.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are. And I feel like, I was talking to Matt in the last episode, and it's like, how many of these films do you think you're going to get as submissions? Like a billion?
Yeah.
Like 2 billion? It's going to be a little bit much.
Well, Mel Addington was telling me that she's already seen a couple short films that deal with it. It's already here. I saw it in my class. I'm actually watching for my film production class for my sophomore juniors. I've already seen 4 COVID-19 films.
Wow. Already?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a bit much. And so you wonder, do you zig there, and do comedies become more important? Do other things like that?
I feel like comedies and escapist entertainment, I think, is going to have a resurgence in this. I don't think people want to go to a movie theater or sit down on their couch and watch, a streaming service to see something that reflects the reality that they're living in.
Yeah. So if you do a COVID thing, you got to do either really something different with it. That's like, Shane Carruth style different.
Right.
Or like you're the only person who can tell this version of it, not just your normal whatever. Or you got to go different drama that has nothing to do with it, or comedy or something like that. Would be my
guess. I have a feeling comedy is going to have a resurgence, because I think people just want to feel something else,
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm looking forward to it. The film I'm doing now is a drama, and I already have a comedy lined up for the next thing that I want to make as soon as it's done. So,
cool.
Yeah, hopefully we can get that going.
Cool. All right, so I think that pretty much covers it. Trying to think if there's anything else to hit. You're just out of it, so I wanted to catch you fresh.
Yeah.
Before you forgot any of the things. So, like, what's your big takeaways from it? How has it changed since the last time you did a campaign that is not sort of pandemic related?
Well, the work hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
The work is just going through a list of people who you're connected with in some way, or that you become connected to in some way, and try to convince them to become part of a team that you're on making something. So in that sense, nothing's changed. I think people are a lot more media savvy now and a lot more crowdfunding savvy now,
Right.
10 years later. So there's no, what's the word? There's no uniqueness of coming forth with a crowdfunding campaign, because everybody and their brother and sister have already done one.
Right.
So I think now it becomes even more important to try to find some kind of real personal connection that you can create with a possible backer or possible, follower, and really tug at their heartstrings, or, make them, really get them involved, get them invested, emotionally somehow. I think that's really the big change now. And I'm lucky in that the people that ended up coming on board to support us either were already invested in, the world of mental health. But even those people were people I knew from previous films that I had worked on. So like, it was just trying to figure out, okay, here's someone who I worked with on a short film. She works as a social worker. She's dedicated her life to mental health advocacy. She's someone I think I can get. And then to craft the ask, send the ask out, and then thank goodness you get a conversion and she comes on board with a contribution. That's really what it was. It was a lot more targeted, I think, than it was last time.
Do you think there's still room for innovation, like inside of campaigns?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of creating an entertainment experience in the campaign. I mean, there's so much room within that. You could see, and I mean, God bless the person with the time and energy to do this. Somebody coming up with a campaign for a movie where they make another movie that's broken up into parts that you can watch if you follow the campaign. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Like you could have like a web series that tells the story up to the beginning of your feature. And then, you know what I mean? So you've got people who would make twice the content, and be able to share half of it with their audience. I haven't seen that yet. I think that would be something that would work really well.
That's kind of the old transmedia thing that was hot for a minute, and then everyone decided it was too much work.
Well, that's it. But I think, if someone, and it doesn't have to be video per se, I mean, somebody could be crowdfunding a podcast project,
Mhm.
and you could have like a precursor story that leads up to it, and that can be entertainment that you can give, or a podcast project to lead up to a film, something
Right.
like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be more video created for that. So yeah, I think there's plenty of room for innovation. I'm really excited to see what these younger kids are going to do with it now, because I mean, we didn't have TikTok growing up. We didn't have,
Oh,
you know what I mean? So
yeah.
they have more tools than we had. So I think I'm excited to see kind of what they do and kind of how they approach this, once they start working on their own stuff.
I'm a little disappointed that you didn't do any TikTok dances. I'm not on the TikTok, but I know that there's dancing. And I'm a little disappointed that you didn't do a TikTok dance for the campaign.
All right, so there's a reason.
Or did you?
No,
Did I
there's
miss
a
it?
specific reason why I don't do any dancing anymore.
Okay.
When we did the Rising Star campaign, there was a perk that we gave out where if we raised, I think it was $500 on a particular day of the campaign, that I would do a video where I would dance and lip sync to a rap song.
Sure.
And of course, we raised $1,000 on that day. So I had to do the Humpty Dance. I had to lip sync to the Humpty Dance while dancing on a street in Bristol, Connecticut, while our producer, Matt Giovanucci, filmed me walking down the street. And it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever done in my life. And I swore no matter what I did the rest of my life, I would never do it again. So that's the reason why.
So next campaign is what you're saying. So you say that, but then you're going to hit a wall in a campaign. You're going to be like, fuck it, I'll do the dance.
Yeah,
God
and it'll be
damn
the
it.
same people who gave $1,000 the last time too, probably.
Yeah, hey, $1,000 is $1,000. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me. I will let you get back to just passing out from exhaustion.
And correcting papers. Yeah,
And correcting papers. Oh, that sounds terrible.
it's almost done.
All right. Cool. All right, Marty Lang, thank you so much for joining me. You have anything you want to, where do we find you on the internet?
So most likely you'll find me on Twitter at Marty_Lang, MartyLang. Yeah, so find me there and we'll chat indie film or just chat in general.
Cool. Thank you so much.